All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. We're just waiting for Chris here for a little bit, and then we should get going fairly soon. All right, it looks like Chris is having some password problems there. He should be joining us momentarily, hopefully.
Mm. There we go. Hello.
Cool. This is here. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. All right.
Oh, here we go. Turn on camera. Here we
Now
go.
that you're
Hello.
here. Hey, welcome. How's it going?
Sorry for the delay. I forgot that there was this the new authentication to get into the super secret room. So I love it.
Yeah, we want to avoid random raids and streamers and such, so it does make it a little safer for us. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'll be flying solo because both of my organizers are sadly not available. But my name is Chris Bolta, as you of course know. We're here today with Chris Niskala, who is a composer, sound designer, Berkeley faculty, chiptune enthusiast, tracker power user, the whole
I don't know about
shebang.
power user, but I do like
Certainly more than me.
it.
And yeah, you are joining us today because you were wanting to share a bit about your work on Squishy Jump, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course.
One thing I do need to check out real quick is I'd like to be able to share my screen. Do you have that set up for the meeting? Will I just be able to share the screen whenever I need to?
You should be able to, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna test it out really quickly before I get started, just to be sure.
Yeah, I
I
just
want to make
verified
sure
you.
that the audio works. That's the important. Go live. Hey, look, it's the window again. And I'm wondering, can you tell me? Here, let's just play some music here. Can you hear this music? Can you hear that?
It was unclear if it came in through the microphone or not.
That could be a problem if it's feeding through my microphone. It should all be set up, so this could really get in the way of things if I can't share audio. It's funny how audio.
Did you do the share system audio thing in within Discord?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Stop.
Okay, cool.
Stream quality. See, stop streaming. It never works on the first try.
Yeah, share screen mode is on. Okay.
I'm just going to try it a second time. Screen one. Uncheck it. Check it back. Go live. Yeah, I'm going to play this video. Maybe. Anything?
Yeah, that's coming through on my end too. Yep.
Okay, good. Okay. So let's get started. So from what Noah told me, here's my window. I have about an hour to speak. I guess I only have 45 minutes now, or maybe we'll still just go an hour. That's kind of what I
Oh, it's
plan.
still good. And yeah, let me know what you think. People like to ask questions here too. If you want to keep an eye on the chat, or I can chime in if there's a question that's relevant to what you're showing us in the moment.
Yeah, actually, if you can help out with that, because I'll be kind of sharing the screen and looking at stuff here on my side, and I probably won't be able to handle it all at the same time. So if there are questions in the middle, I definitely want to have some time for Q&A at the end, but I'm totally fine if people want to ask questions based on what I'm talking about at the moment.
Cool. Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the chat. Yeah, if any questions come up while we're going through here, just let me know and I'll relay them at the appropriate time.
Thank you so much. Okay, so well, I guess I should start off and introduce myself. I'm sure some of you may know me. I don't know who here is. I see I have one past student here. But yeah, so I'm Chris Niskala. I teach at Berkeley alongside Noah, and more recently Kaio has joined us. I got kind of like a weird backstory, and I'll try not to elaborate too hard because we'll be here all night. But I first started in electrical engineering. I decided I was too good for that. Okay, I wasn't too good for that. It just didn't fit me so well. I was already doing a lot of music on the side, and I just thought, no, that's got to be what I'm going to actually do. And actually, there was a little blurb about me saying that I was doing like game music for like 20 years. That's not completely true. I mean, I've been doing music for 20 years professionally, but it's not always been games. So when I decided to leave engineering, I got my start doing drum and bass. Don't know why. That's just some music I liked at the time, and I just thought I can do that. I can get into this, and so I just decided I'm going to take that seriously. And then I ended up, doing okay there, but I kind of left that because I don't want to live my life in a club. And a friend of mine helped me get a job working at CIDC, which was used to be in Cambridge. It's since closed down. And that was the first time I worked in games. I did composing and sound effects. In fact, that was the first time I had ever really done sound effects. It's great to do it professionally first. That was a weird way. But anyway, but then they shut that down. I managed to get 3 games with them. And then I decided, you know what, I need to get much better at being a composer. By the way, this was like something like 15 years ago. It was a while ago. And so I found out about Berklee's online program and went back to school. I did the whole stay-at-home dad thing for a while. But I got really into doing music licensing, like doing libraries. So I have like some music placed in National Geographic specials, some Discovery Canada stuff. Only Discovery Canada, couldn't make it to Discovery US, but Discovery Canada is better. Anyway, I did all kinds of like whatever I could do being a stay-at-home dad and not really being able to meet deadlines. I just did, whatever kind of work I could find. And then I decided I was going to go back for the degree, and that I started coming to Game Audio Boston. It was before COVID. I'm trying to remember what year. I met Michael Sweet. That kind of pulled me back into games. I started doing game remixes on YouTube. I started meeting, people at, kind of smaller game companies, trying to get, working on projects. Of course, a lot of them just sort of never really went the distance, and I have nothing to show for it, unfortunately. But then at some point I started, making better connections while I was still, at Berkeley. I eventually graduated, like I was taking classes one at a time. And then somehow ended up with a very interesting position of teaching at Berkeley shortly after I graduated. I must have done something to impress Michael Sweet, I guess. I don't really know how that happened, but I ended up on a list, and I ended up teaching at Berkeley. In the meantime, I still write music for games, and this is one that we're talking about tonight. Squishy Jump is a game that we've been working on for about a year, although there isn't any particular reason why we should have worked on this for a year. But game dev is game dev, and problems occur, and luckily none of those problems were on the audio side, which I'm very happy to report back that everything went very, very nicely on the audio side. But the chaos on the other side was another story. And we had, multiple programmers coming in and out, like no one wanted to stick around. And it's finally nice to kind of get the game done. At this point, it's only kind of, we've shipped it to itch. At this point, we're trying to get it onto phones, and they're trying to jump through some business hoops to actually get it listed. So it's technically out there, but we're not really doing any marketing yet. We're trying to get it on phones because it's meant to be a phone game, and you'll see in a second when I start showing the game. So I just wanted to say thanks again for having me here. It's kind of nice because you invite such great guests month to month, and to be here and get to talk about our little tiny game is actually kind of cool. But hopefully I can share some nuggets of wisdom, hopefully. So this game, Squishy Jump, it's basically like Doodle Jump. Anybody played Doodle Jump, right? You probably kind of have an idea of how Doodle Jump works. But there's a reason we arrived at doing that kind of a game. So we did have a point where the company was a bit larger, and we were making this game for an anime called Oban Star Racers. I don't know if anybody here has ever even heard of that show. It's an anime. We were working with the actual show creator. We made an entire demo for him. It was a racing game, and I did all the audio for that, and he loved it. But then he just kind of kept dragging his feet on like signing the contracts and like I'll get to it soon. And he's very busy trying to make some new seasons of the show. And so we just decided, you know what? Let's make some smaller games while we're waiting for him to get his act together. Let's just make a bunch of fun small games because we all have experience in our respective fields, but I just feel like we should get better team synergy going because this we at best we kind of made the demo together. Well, anyway, after we decided to do that, a number of people left. They just really wanted to work on the anime game, so we were just kind of left figuring out like what simple game could we do, and the whole doodle jump type idea. Like, there's so much you could do with that. So the idea was with Jamie, my boss. She's an artist, so she thinks like an artist. Like, what kind of art? What can we do to kind of like change the feel of the game without actually really just changing the game mechanics? So this project was born out of that idea. Like, let's just make a simple game that we could knock out really fast. And that did not happen. It took an entire year. But we ended up, while we were kind of working on problems, they came up with more ideas, like more hazards and enemies and stuff that come your way. So in the end, we actually kind of ended up making a better game than we really even set out to do. So, which is kind of cool. Let's see. So what I want to talk about here specifically is how I did the music, how I did the sound effects, and lastly, how everything was organized, right? How did I keep the project organized, especially since the rest of the project, they were completely unorganized, and I wasn't really having that. I really needed to have some form of organization. And eventually I had another person working with me. I invited Malo Chu on board to help with the implementation eventually. So that really helped in the end. With this company being a very small company, I was the only audio person there. So by default, I get to be the audio director. Yes, default is a great word. So it was when we started talking about the music. I asked Jamie. So the typical conversation you have with a dev, like, okay, what should I do now? Like, give me some references and that kind of stuff. Well, Jamie just said, hey, you're the audio director. I leave that to you to figure out the audio. And I was like, I've never really been in that situation of just sort of like, wait, I can do whatever I want. Very fun, but also a little scary, right? Because now I can't blame anybody for, if something goes wrong, I can't blame it on bad direction. So, but I really, I really enjoyed being able to kind of make my own choices, right? And so, I really had to kind of figure out, well, what do I really personally want to do, and really, what does the game need, right? And so, actually, before I get going, one thing I should show you so you have a little bit of understanding. Wait, am I still sharing screen? I just realized, like, anyway.
Yeah, I still.
Over here, I want to show you a little trailer so you can get an idea of what the game looks like, right? And you'll hear the audio as well. So here you go. So that's what it looks like in the end. It took a long time to get to have it look like that. So when I first started with the music, I thought, well, one thing you might notice, and actually you can see this on our company website, it says that we are really into Studio Ghibli, right? And unabashedly so. If you see this, if you've all right, where to go? You can see that this kind of is very reminiscent of the movie Ponyo. If anybody is a fan of Studio Ghibli, right? You can see that there's it's just different enough, but even like the fish, the jellyfish, like a lot of this stuff is obviously is very Ghibli-like. And so I had to make the decision: do I want to lean into this, like let's be like Ghibli, or should I go a different direction? And in the end, I thought, you know what, it might be too much to have it be too obvious that it's a Ghibli thing. So I thought visually is enough. I don't really feel the need to be like Joe Hisaishi. So I really just kind of started playing around with my own ideas, right? So, at first I just sat down like usual with a piano, but then I started to realize like this kind of music is probably just going to be a vibe. It's not going to be like, no one's going to be paying attention to how sweet is the melody. And it's going to be, I didn't want to have like necessarily an iconic melody or something like that. So I started to realize like I need to worry more about the feel of the music. So I actually started kind of thinking about like the instrumentation that I was going to need. And what I did is just look to my own favorite games and just said, okay, let's go back. I love a lot of retro games, so I just went back and said, well, what are my favorite stages that are like watery stages? Like what makes for good water music, right? And I landed on, like ideas like and you probably heard it in there, there was like this electric piano in there. And I put some effects on there, like the phaser effects on there. It's kind of vintage, but it definitely has like, somewhat of a watery feel. So I just feel like that was, a good way to achieve that. I also noticed like in Mario 64, anybody know, what's it called? Was it Jolly Roger's Bay and Dire Dire Docks? I think are the two stages that use this very iconic music from back then that uses a DX7. And at the time I had just bought this. I have a DX7 over here. I was in love with this thing, like, yes, I should use DX7. Of course, I didn't use the actual DX7. I ended up just using a plugin. But I basically just kind of started doing, like, just kind of the fundamental behind it. And I was like, yes, this has that sort of, the sound of water, however that is. Funny thing is, after I had composed a lot more and had it pretty close to finished, I went back and realized, like, there's some parts of that where I start using the vibraphone, because also that feels like sort of a watery instrument. I realized I was totally channeling the Zora's Domain music from Ocarina of Time, if anybody's a fan of that. I didn't intend that. It just sort of happened, and it just shows how much this stuff is ingrained in my brain that I just automatically go to that. And I'm speaking specifically in terms of texture, not really in terms of taking any musical content. But before I really finished the music, I also wanted to think about like what kind of adaptability did I want the music to have? Because I was pretty sure, especially being a Berkeley professor, that I shouldn't just make a static loop and call it good. I mean, I literally make a living teaching about working in interactive media, and I thought, well, I do want to do something with this, that it's not just a static loop, but I didn't want it to be too over the top. And I arrived at the idea that it should be a layered score in some way, so that it's not just, as you're playing the game, it's not just playing the same thing on a loop, that it does feel like it's really reacting to what you're doing. At first I didn't really know how that was going to play out, but I just thought, like, let's layer, and, for now, let's just do it with your score, right? And the higher your score, the more layers come in, right? Simple enough idea. In the end, that's what I chose to do, right? When we first started, though, we thought we were going to be doing this project in Unity. And I just decided I would use Fmod if that was the case. And of course, knowing Fmod, I just said, well, I'm going to make this as complicated as possible. So I had concocted this very, very for lack of a better word, overcomplicated system that, if I could have pulled it off, like if we were actually using that in the end, it would have been great. But I basically just dreamed big. I basically created a piece of music knowing it was going to be layered. I had like 8 different instruments all layered out separately. I had multi-instruments in there with multiple variations of the melody and counter melody, and the counter melody would become the melody at some point. And, I was doing all kinds of craziness. And then, which was fun to dream of. But in the end, after what happened last year with the whole Unity debacle, Jamie just decided we're never using Unity ever. I hate that company. I can't believe they would do such a thing. We went to GameMaker instead. And I said, well, there goes Fmod. Fmod wasn't available. But actually, halfway through the project, funny enough, they made an Fmod package for GameMaker. And it was too late at that point. We had already started doing, the audio programming, everything. I was like, no, we'll let other people test that out to see if there are any bugs, because we're not going to switch. So maybe on the next project, I'll actually get to do GameMaker and Fmod and see what those are like when brought together. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so we had to make this switch, and we were going to do it in programming. And at the time, that was on me. I was supposed to be the programmer as well. And I thought, well, I'm not gonna make this too hard on myself. I'm just gonna simplify the whole thing. So in the end, I just chose to do 5 layers. It's like 4 musical layers, and I have this 5th layer that's like when you trigger a power up, it plays this arpeggio that basically locks in with the specific harmony in the track. So because I never write music that's in one key, so I will never have one arpeggio that can really cover them all. We ended up with just 5 simple tracks. So not quite as complicated as I wanted, but it's still, once we got it working in the game, I realized this is the way to go. It makes it feel like every time you die, which happens often, you die, you go back to the beginning, the music like calms down to that initial layer, but it doesn't disturb the flow of the game. So I thought, that's the power of layering, right? It keeps the loop going, but it makes it feel like, the music starts off very kind of very open. And just like the game itself, when you first start, there's just a couple of jellyfish to bounce off of. There's really no enemies in your way. And it gets more intense as you go. And I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. And so in the end, what I did was it was like 500 points, you get another instrument popping in. So it just starts off with just a harmony. Then you're treated to a nice melody, and it's like, ooh, And then the real treat is when you hit 2,000 points, the drums and the congas come in. And that's the version you just heard in that trailer, that like it really grooves. That's what I was kind of going for, is like you're rewarding the player for good play. Once you hit 2,000, that's not the highest score ever, but that's definitely like you're doing well. So I literally wanted that final layer to get the player like in that kind of state where you're just like, yeah, I'm really feeling the game, right? But then as soon as you die, it sort of feels like it calms back down, which is nice. But it never restarts, because I hate that idea of like you restart, you die, you restart, and the music starts from the beginning, and then you have to hear the intro all the time. And I was like, that's not right for this particular situation. I was just thinking there was something I wanted to mention. I just realized, let me just look through my notes here. One of the things, when I was actually composing it too, knowing that it was going to have these layers, knowing that like just the harmony layer was going to be playing by itself, that was actually a little tricky to actually have, like, let's say these layers that when I had just the harmony and then just the melody over top of it, it sounded good enough. Like it sounded somewhat complete, right? It didn't sound like, oh, where's everything else? So that when, like, let's say the melody arrives, you're like, ooh, that's a nice compliment. Right? And then it sounds good by itself. It sounds stable. Then the bass comes in and you're like, oh yeah, groovy bass. Like, it's like the bass line becomes its own melody. That it feels like it wasn't like, where was the bass? You were fine without the bass being there. And it was, there was a little bit of back and forth on my part trying to figure out how to get it that stable at each point, that when something would go away, it would still feel like a complete piece of music in some way, shape, or form. Um, so all in all, though, I felt really good about the that sort of initial piece of music that I made. Like, I had good sort of reviews from people I was showing it to, other people on the team too. Like when they eventually heard it, they were like, "Oh man, now I'm excited about this game." I was like, because of my music, I don't know, I didn't expect that they were going to be vibing on it that hard. So I was very excited by that. So, but yeah, after that, I decided to make a menu music. You always have to have the kind of, well, you don't have to have it, but I decided to go with menu music. That's how it stayed for a while, right? We thought the game was going to be done at this one point, and we just thought it's just going to have those two pieces of music, and that's it. And then the game kind of kept lingering for so long, and I just was a little bit bored and thought, well, I got some time. Why wouldn't I make more music? Why just stick with one piece of music? And then I was thinking like the old school Tetris, if anybody knows, like from Game Boy or from NES. Tetris had music A, music B, and music C. And I thought, I think I want to go for something like that. So I actually started on writing a second piece of music. And if you remember, I said for the first piece of music, I really wanted to stay away from the Ghibli type sound. Well, I thought for the second one, why don't I try to lean into that and see how that goes? Maybe write some sort of, I was thinking like a piano piece. And I just started messing around and I came up with something that I thought, man, this sounds so good. And then I realized I was basically almost playing something from Spirited Away, which is weird because I've never learned any pieces from Spirited Away, but what I came up with was very, very close. And then that can be a dangerous thing if you don't realize that. The good thing is I realized what I was doing. I was like, there's no way I wrote a piece of music that good. So I started going through a lot of, Ghibli soundtracks. I was like, I swear this is something. Turns out it was. So it was good that I caught that because I was able to go in and actually make sure, change some bits, make sure I'm not doing the exact thing. But I knew I was onto something. Like it had that kind of vibe. And so I came up with something that was a little bit different than the other one, whereas the other one was kind of groovy, a little faster tempo. I made something that was like just a little bit slower and like a nice alternative. So if someone didn't like music A or they were just sick of music A, they had music B to choose. And I came up with something like this. Can you hear that okay? Is it loud enough?
I think a bit of it might be coming in through your speakers as well. So I think they kind of fight with each other sometimes.
Okay. I can turn that down. Is that better? I turned my volume down. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I'm hearing it fine on my end if I had turned the stream volume up a bit.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, some of this stuff is kind of quiet and there's no way to to boost it. Well, anyway, hopefully you heard at least some of that. You can see it has a little bit of a more relaxed vibe in comparison. Either way, both of the choices, I really didn't want the music to be too overly intense. As you can see from the visuals here, it's very, it has a very relaxing feel. The game can get intense at times when there's a lot of stuff on the screen, but I really wanted to have the music help to sort of relax you even while you're going through, all of this stuff. It's supposed to be just a game that you're not. It's not Dark Souls, right? It shouldn't be making you more stressed, right? So eventually, I may make a third piece of music. The idea is that we're still going to do updates for the game, and there's talk of doing a Switch port that has a widescreen thing with co-op. Where you can play with two people at the same time. And so, maybe I'll eventually write some more pieces. But for now, this is what I ended up. So it's only 3 pieces of music. But I kind of spent so much time because of the kind of layered aspects, making sure that all those details worked out. It ended up being a decent amount of work. More than I originally thought, actually, when I first started. So let's see. Before I'm going to move on to sound effects, I just want to make sure that I haven't forgotten any. Yeah, so in the end, I got to choose what I wanted to do, and I feel like I matched the game well. right? I found a good balance between music that I like and music that really goes with the game well. Sometimes those don't line up, but in this case, because I get to, I really appreciated that my boss allowed me to do this. And it'd be nice if all games you could just do whatever you want, but it's not necessarily always the case. So I definitely count my blessings on this one, that I had free reign, right? So the next bit is how I dealt with the sound design, right? I actually hadn't done any, I hadn't done any professional sound design in a number of years since I worked for CIDC, like the casino company. In fact, that job was like mostly sound design when you're working on those slot machines. You know, those win sounds and the UI sounds are like super important. So it had been since then, since I had done it kind of in a release game. So I had done it, you know, here and there, and had learned a lot of stuff being at Berkeley, how to be better at sound design. And it was really nice to come back to a commercial product and be able to use all the stuff that I've learned over the course of, you know, the last 8 to 10 years and do this again. Because I'm definitely a sound designer second. I'm a composer first. Like a lot of us, I'm sure we, you know, our true love is music. But I really love when I do sound design. I really love it. It's a whole lot of fun. I wish I could convince, you know, everyone I'm working with to let me do sound design as well. In fact, the current game that I'm working on, an upcoming game, I'm trying to convince him to allow me to do sound design. He wants to do it himself, but I want to help in any way because sound design is so fun, especially after doing this. So sound design was the second thing that I did. I mean, some of it was kind of being done at the same time, but I definitely went after the music first, and I wanted to have kind of like the overall feel of it. And then once I had that kind of stable is when I started, you know, if I had writer's block at some point, I would just, you know, that's when I'd go after the sound effects. And one thing for myself, I set a personal goal. I wanted to make all the sounds completely from scratch. I don't know why. I just decided like that'll be great practice for me to not rely on pulling things out of libraries. You know, often I might do that. I might buy like a little sound pack of random sounds and start layering them together, processing them. But in this case, I thought I could get away actually with just seeing the game. I thought, you know what, I can probably do all the sounds myself. In the end, I almost was able to do that. There's one sound. It was an electrical zapping sound. I just couldn't figure out how to get, and I couldn't find a great resource on how to make that sound from scratch. And I wasn't about to buy one of those little, you know, machines that like, you know, it's like 2 metal wires and it goes zap. I don't know what that thing is called, but short of having one of those things here at my house, I didn't think it was going to be possible. So, but everything else in the game, so 99% of the sounds, I just, you know, banged on stuff here in my studio. I just sort of, you know, I have a balloon. I blew up a balloon for the pufferfish, right? Just whatever I could find around me and layered them together, processed everything. If you're not that familiar with sound design, one of the things you got to know is you got to layer things. You can't just record a sound. I can't record a blowing up balloon and call that good, right? So you have to have, you know, different things represented in the frequency spectrum and everything. So, you know, the first thing I tackled is the idea that this is all underwater. And, you know, there's some things, actually, in the end, we added a lot more, like the visuals, like you can see some of the stuff in the background, and even the lighting effects up here that kind of makes it seem like light beaming through the ocean. Originally, actually, that wasn't even there. There wasn't anything to give off the feeling of, like, there's really water. If you notice, there's no, like, you know, like little marks on the screen to make it seem like it's underwater. So I thought, I need to make all the sound effects really sell that story, that we're really underwater. So I just started recording water sounds, you know, not necessarily knowing what I was going after. I just basically got a giant bowl of water, put it on my studio floor, set up my 414 right next to it, put a lot of towels down so I didn't get everything wet. And I just started hitting the water, putting my hand in, making kind of whirlpool type motions, just collecting a bunch of random sounds that I knew would just be watery. And that's what you actually right here, where you see that you're, I don't know if you can, I think you can hear it. Yeah, I don't know how well you can hear it with the music and everything, but there's like a shh type sound. That's like me moving my hand around in water. I recorded my faucet. I got the microphone wire to go all the way out to my kitchen, which is right next to this. Layered a whole bunch of, just pure water sounds together for a number of things. But all the other sounds, like at some point you're jumping on cans. I also put water sounds in with when you hear the can crushing. Almost every single sound in the game, except for the electrical zapping, because I couldn't figure out a reason why electrical zapping would create a watery sound. But other than that, like everything has some sort of watery component added to it to, again, sell the story of being underwater. And it was like when I did my first batch of sound effects that were just basically the basic jump sound, like when you bounce off a jellyfish. The shooting, you actually can shoot. I don't know if you noticed it in that video. You can click the mouse or tap the screen and you actually shoot these little bubbles out that is like a bullet, basically. Things like that. And the can sounds were like the initial sounds. Once we put those in, I was already like, okay, this is definitely going somewhere. This helps sell the experience. Because when you play it, if you've ever been in the case of playing a game when there's no audio yet, it's the most flat experience ever. And then you just put a couple of sound effects in there and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now it feels like a game. And so I did a little test at first with the very basic sounds, and I noticed like having wateriness around all of the sound effects was really important to the experience. So I quickly learned that and started doing that with basically every sound. One thing I want to show a little bit is this. I made a little video here of one of the sounds that I made. In the end, this was the most complicated of all the sounds. This has 11 different layers in it.
Exemplary track naming, I must say.
What was that? My track naming? Yes, exactly. So there's a great story here because this was at the end of the project. I was crunching really hard to be able to get the last couple of sounds done because they sprung it on me at the last minute. Like, oh yeah, we added all these new creatures. So I was like, oh, okay, I better make these really fast. So I just stopped. Some of these actually have names on them, but I was basically just going off of the region names. So I made sure to give good region names, but I just said screw it on this by the end of the project. I made sure to put good markers at the top and make sure to name my region so I knew what I was looking at. But yeah, so most of my sound effects were like three layers of different sounds, right? This by far was the most. And so I'll play it once so you can see. It's going to be like this little bomb that's going to get shot out, and then it'll eventually explode. Here. Is that loud enough?
Heard it pretty well here, but if you can turn it up a bit, that might be helpful.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't, like the sound is as loud as it is. I don't know that you can turn, like, can I turn my own output up so that everyone hears it louder?
Yeah, I think it will just be whatever the level is in Logic, probably.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's not in Logic. This is just a video. This is a QuickTime video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I tried to crank it up as much as possible in Logic before I made the video. Anyway, yeah, if you just have to listen very, very closely. Some of these are quieter than the full sound. So anyway, I'm going to kind of go through each of these so you can see. Actually, I want to go back again. So there's this little, sorry, where'd it go? This little cat manta ray type thing. We have a thing about cats in our studio. Like most game devs, we love cats. So there's cats all over the place. So we have this thing that basically, I don't know, farts out a bomb. I didn't really ask if that's what that's supposed to be. But it's this ball comes out and then poof, explodes. Right? And so I basically just was trying to figure out how to make the sound, and I just ended up relying on me making sounds. So I was just sitting right here. I just put the microphone right next to me. And again, I was crunching, so I was working as fast as possible and just thought, in my head, what do I want to hear here? And just tried to break it up into mental components of, what do I need? And so, these longer ones right here are the lead up, and then the ones here at the end are the actual kind of explosion sound. All right, so there's one. This is me breathing in. That one's pretty quiet. I know you may have trouble hearing that, but unfortunately, I can't really turn it up. But it's just me like sucking in air. I added a second layer with more of like a tss type sound because I really wanted to get some more high frequencies in there. I'm worried these are all way too quiet. This one is basically I did the same thing, but I wobbled my mouth because I felt like it was sounding too straightforward and flat. I wanted it to have sort of kind of a modulation to it. So I was just going kind of like as I was breathing in. This one is, I don't even know how I thought of this, but I was probably sitting here doing this thinking like, what do I want to do? And I literally was like, wait a minute. And I just did something like this right in front of the microphone. And I was watching the video as I do all of these. And I was able to sort of make it slower and then get faster right before it explodes. So it's actually, this is sort of like doing Foley work for a movie or something like that. And then let's see. Oh, and the last one is really interesting. So I have an accordion. I kind of suck at the accordion, but I have one. It's over here. I'm always looking for something to do with it. And there's a button on the accordion that it basically takes the reeds out of the pathway of the air. And so when you open and close it while holding that button, it just has the sound of the air. And I decided to use that here. And again, hopefully you can hear that. But it had a more hollow type sound and that kind of woodiness that I thought was good to kind of counterbalance everything that I'm doing using my mouth. And then we had the other bits, which are the explosion itself. Oh, sorry. So that's all of them together. So I'm going to sort of speed this process up. I mean, these are basically just different because like me going poof. This one right here, I wish this region was a little bit longer. That says Samus. And the reason that says Samus is because what I did to make that sound, and it's weird that I did this, but I have a little Samus sort of stress ball thing from Metroid, if anybody is familiar. And who knows, I was probably stressed out doing one of these numbers and just thought like, I need to get some sort of like nice attack. And what I did is I actually just hit that onto the microphone. And it actually sounds pretty like intense actually, but all I did was just lightly tap it onto the microphone, just enough to not break my microphone. But that worked really well. I was surprised. Like, you'd think that might be like, like red line or something like that. But a nice little tap, it actually added a much needed like oomph to this sound. And so I also ended up using, I did some more of my own voice. I also used the, right here, I actually used the accordion again to get the kind of off gas, the way this looks on the screen here, that it's not like a crunchy explosion. It's more of a poof, right? It's supposed to be underwater. And again, the accordion totally worked. So anything around you really can make sound, right? In the right context, right? It can work. So I thought it was crazy when I was doing it, but then when it all came together, I thought, like, actually, this is kind of cool. Um, Let me just skip to the end when I will play the whole thing all over again. So all in all, again, very happy with how that all worked out. Just taking that leap of faith that I'll be able to do this, just making sounds from around the room. Again, it was like an artificial thing that I imposed on myself because I just thought, well, it's been a while since I've done sound design. Let's give myself a challenge. Why ease into it slowly when I can just jump right into the deep end? So, but yeah, I was again, like, a little nervous at first, but in the end, I sort of breathed a sigh of relief when I was able to get it done. And now I feel like I can call myself a sound designer again. Because having not done it for so long, I was like, can I even be called a sound designer anymore? I hadn't done it in like, so many years. But yeah, it was really fun. And I'm looking forward to the next game with this company. We already have like 4 more games already planned, and she already has people doing artwork for all 4 of these games. And I'm looking forward to being able to do sound design for those as well. So it's going to be pretty cool. The last thing I noticed, we're sort of coming up on time here, but I do want to talk a little bit about this idea of organizing the project. And I don't really need that much time to kind of go over the details because I didn't do anything particularly monumental. But the reason why I wanted to include this in the story of the game, because if you've learned about how to be organized and the good old spreadsheet, right? I have a the spreadsheet is here. Good old spreadsheet. Oh my God, that's blindingly bright. The spreadsheet is as good as you've heard it is, right? If you're not already getting on this saved us so much time and energy actually sticking to this spreadsheet. It's very easy to start off creating a spreadsheet and saying, I'm going to be organized this time. And then a month in, you just say, whatever, I gotta, there's not enough time. But what I try to do here is actually make something a little bit more simple, right? There's another game that I'm working on as well that I actually had more information in the spreadsheet. And I felt like I want a spreadsheet and like an asset list and this color coding system that's so easy to use that it's like at a glance, I can just see exactly what needs to be done. Right, and when it came to working with Mallow, by the way, I tried to get Mallow to come here and talk as well about their experience, but they weren't available tonight. So I can't really talk much about the kind of implementation side. I mean, I can talk about it from my experience because we talked through some of these things, but Mallow is physically the one who did the implementation. So I was just kind of an advisor on like, here's how you might want to, think about doing it. And they're the ones who get full credit on all implementation. So when it came to us working together on this stuff, this spreadsheet was like, it was like a game of Pong between the two of us. I would put some stuff in, Mallow would, implement it or tell me, something needed to be changed. We'd basically bouncing things back and forth from each other. Like we were working on the game asynchronously, and we basically cut down on a lot of unnecessary communication, which, it's not like I hate Mallow. I actually really like hanging out and talking with Mallow, but there are a lot of times, I have a busy schedule. Mallow has a busy schedule. I could do work when I was ready to do work. Let's say if I did my work during the day and Mallow was doing work at night, I didn't have to constantly say, oh yeah, then the new sounds are up. Please put them in when you get a chance. No, I just made this color coding system here for things that are ready to be implemented. And when Mallow was ready, they could come in here and look and see where all the orange was, or the yellow, orangey yellow. And just know, okay, these are the things that I want to do. And then they would leave a note for me saying, okay, that's been implemented. So that when I was ready to do some testing, I would just come here and see what's been implemented. and I could see like, oh yeah, these are the last 3 things we put in. I left them here. Then I would go, pull down a copy of the game from Git. I'd play it looking for these specific things. So I would try to, test out the Mr. Whale thing, which, by the way, that was actually ended up being kind of complicated with this game because everything is randomly generated as you play the game. So I'd have to just keep playing the game until certain things would just show up. Until I got a little bit more savvy and tried to mess with the probabilities inside the game code to make it more likely things would show up. But I didn't get a debug mode. Next time I'm going to ask for some sort of debug mode because testing this, I spent many hours just playing this game. So much so you think I'd be better at it. But it is what it is. But you can see here, we have, a whole host of sound effects. Do I have a count here? Well, I mean, it's a little less than 40 sound effects, not counting, some of these have multiple variations, but this spreadsheet was sort of like super tight. It has, what the asset is, a description of when that's going to happen, so it makes sense for what it's going to be in the game, whether, how it's going to be implemented, and I gave file names for everything. Some of these before I even had made the sound for it. I, just did the right thing, gave it, a good name. I've done in the past also like adding a link to where it is on our Google Drive. This time, I didn't bother to add that, and Mallow had no trouble. Just like, oh, I need to put the, I can easily find the SFX puffer, when needed. So it allowed us to like work on this stuff super quickly. In fact, we got most of these sounds done. I created the sounds, and we had them in the game in under 2 weeks. We thought we had a deadline at one point that we were going to release the game. And that's when so the programmer just disappeared, and we ended up not hitting that deadline, and then went another 8 months after that before it released. So we were rushing, where we were like, we need to get this done. And I'm still happy the fact that we actually were able to work so fast. So let me just go through here a little bit with the sound effects. The music, that's kind of straightforward. It's really just 3 pieces of music, but I actually added, the information for each of these layers here. We did do VO. I personally didn't. I wasn't there for the recording session. I had Mallow take care of that. But you probably heard it in the trailer. There were like these little vocalizations. We decided, basically, when we were making this particular spreadsheet, we went through and just decided like, what kind of sounds are we looking for? And we decided to not use any language whatsoever. We wanted something that just kind of gave a general sense of that emotion. So when it says here, ouch, like under no circumstances was the voice actress to say ouch at any point. It was very specific that this was like the feeling to give the direction. So again, I sort of met with the voice actress and explained this stuff, but I wasn't there when they actually did the recording session. But Mallow did a wonderful job there. I got back like lots of variations of all these things. And my job was basically to go through and listen to all of the kind of getting hurt sounds, here, like this one here, and pick 3 of them that were close enough to each other that I could consider those to be variations, right? Let's see. And then a very important part to our process was the bug list. Right, and I'm going to switch away from this because you don't need to read that. You don't need to see our dirty laundry there on what all the bugs were. But that was actually a lot easier to have the bugs in a separate sheet as opposed to trying to put them on the asset sheet with like color coding or something like that. Like there's a bug there. I could be a little bit more wordy in describing the bugs, but I was the tester. I played the role of the tester. So Mallow would basically just put the sounds in and just say, oh, they're there. And then I would go through and like really listen hard, like, oh, I think there's like a, delay on the sound effect, or this one doesn't seem to be triggering all the time. It only seems to trigger certain times, whatever it is. I would be the sort of QA guy as well. So I was definitely pulling a lot of roles in this game. But yeah, that bug list was very important to getting things done super quickly. Again, didn't really do anything beyond, like, I was taught to do it that way. Like, create a simple spreadsheet, have your assets there, keep track of everything. the reason why I wanted to include it is because I wanted to really impress upon everyone, like, don't forget to do that. It's really important, even for a small game. I mean, we had maybe about 40 sound effects. There was like 20 something voice assets, and like the music, it was like 10. There was some stingers in there. I mean, there were less than 100 sounds altogether. But it was still totally worth it to have that, even for, I mean, it's not like we were making Unpacked and I had 10,000 sounds. All right. I don't want to see that spreadsheet. But even for a small project, be organized, right? It makes everything so much more pleasant to work on when you can just pull up the spreadsheet, especially if you're working on a lot of projects at the same time. Sometimes you're working on something else and you come back and you're like, wait, where was I? What was I doing? It's like leaving a Zelda game for a year straight and then coming back and being like, what am I even doing here? Then you got to start at the beginning, right? It's kind of the same thing. You want to make sure to kind of keep tabs on your own progress, right? Like I said before, I mentioned this earlier. I was by myself at first. Mallow wasn't there at the beginning of the project. I already had that spreadsheet made just to keep myself from getting confused. Of course, I'm easily confused. That's just me, but comes with age, I guess. But yeah, that's basically the whole spiel. The game is out there. If any of this looked interesting, again, it's only on itch at this point on a PC, and I feel like you can kind of tell from looking at this. This game is made for a phone. It is actually kind of nice to play on a PC, like using a mouse. You can use WASD to control, and you can use your mouse to get really you can snipe things really nicely with the mouse. But yeah, like all in all, I was very happy with what we did on the audio side. I know what makes a great postmortem is talking about all the really bad problems that came up, but I tried to keep all the problems out of my department and making sure that audio was going to work flawlessly and would be on schedule for everything, so that no one would ever be waiting on audio, right? That was like my goal going into this. Like, we should never be the people holding up the pipeline. And we were always the first to finish our tasks, which is great. So I think, I wish Mallow was here in person so I could say, great job, Mallow. Because Mallow helped me out a lot to make sure all of that stuff works so smoothly. So this was the first time I actually got to act as the audio director on an actual kind of commercially released product. So going into it was a little, I shouldn't say scary. I was definitely very excited about getting to do it, but having knowing about how it's supposed to go and actually doing it, sometimes they're two different things. So yeah, I had a good time. We got, I don't know if we need to kind of wrap it up because it's 8:00, or if we still have some time to do questions. I'm happy to talk about, I know I glossed over a whole lot of stuff, but I'm happy to talk about any details, background details about the project.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone has a question, feel free to unmute yourself as well. Sorry about my cat in the background there.
Hey, never apologize for your cat. That's actually just makes every video stream better.
Yeah. I was just going to say, yeah, you made a great point there about doing your due diligence is really important with any scale of project. And it's also even if it seems trivial, it's also even just good practice for the bigger projects to just get used to it and just have it be muscle memory to do your work and then document it and then also present what you've done. Yeah, I think that being on a project where there's thousands and thousands of things to manage, it definitely prepares you well for that.
Oh, yeah. And I know that's what we're heading towards. I mentioned at the beginning, we're supposed to be working on this much larger game eventually. And I thought, well, I'm not going to go into this thinking it's just a simple phone game. I'm thinking, we're just warming up for a lot more stuff. And each project we have planned is a little bit bigger than the last. So by the time we get to this racing game, which is supposed to have multiplayer in it, it's going to have all kinds of stuff that I'm going to have to, learn about, in terms of attaching sound effects to specific objects to know what's the, it really depends on whether I'm going to be doing that kind of stuff. But in a multiplayer environment dealing with things that are like what client side and the other people, like what's happening on their client versus your client, how all the audio plays out. That's something I haven't had a chance to do personally, and it's a little scary thinking about doing it now. But the one side of me is like, let's do this, right? The masochistic side of me is like, yeah, let's do this. Let's make it as complicated as possible. But that was always a thought in my head of like, there's gonna be more, so let's do it the right way and just make sure that we have sort of a good culture. If me and Mallow are going to continue to work together, I want to build sort of a sort of culture of how we work at this company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. One thing I was curious about is as far as loudness goes, since I assume you didn't have that many, you didn't have that much control over mixing with the bespoke implementation and such. Did you master or export a lot of things to like a specific perceived loudness so they all work well together, sans mixing, or did you end up having to do a bunch of tweaking afterwards?
I did a little bit of everything. So I definitely did mastering, very light mastering, in terms of a little bit of compression, making sure to kind of, boost it up a little bit. What I did was pulled up other phone games and just seeing what their loudness was and tried to get close to that. I actually didn't get that technical on hitting, like looking up what the standards were. I knew I didn't want to have it be overly loud, right? I knew I wanted to be more relaxed type sound, so I didn't want it like, like really like limited, hard lined. I did end up using some compression in Game Maker itself. It has all these effects already built in. They're actually that was the one bit of implementation that I did myself, that I actually went and looked up how the compressor or how effects work in general. And they have a bunch of effects already there. It's just a matter of kind of calling them at the beginning and making the compressor available. It's not quite as easy as putting it on the master chain, like if you're using Fmod or something like that. But it was very easy. I just put and I realized everything was a bit quiet, so I used the compressor to help bring everything up, and I just put a very almost basically turned it into a limiter. But I didn't want it to be like too hard like a limiter, so basically just made it work through compression just to get it boosted up a little bit. I'm trying to remember how many dB I sort of did. I'm sort of like output gain, but it still was not really that close to. I'm sure if every single sound in the game played at once, it might actually, hit that, maybe go close to that upper line. But I wanted to make sure there was some compression since I saw that it was available. I was like, oh, it's available. Let's use it. Yeah.
Nice. Do you remember if you use like GameMaker's integrated solutions for like the music system, since you have some layers, or do you know if you use like something from their asset store as far as the like extensions go?
We just use their their audio system, which actually nice. I was surprised that it's like when you try to do some of this stuff in Unity, like you can't just do fades, just like play the music starting with a fade or something like that. GameMaker actually does that. When you play, you can actually tell it what kind of a fade you want to have as it comes in. And so it was, it was pretty easy. But, for the layering, we basically just had it play, when the scene started, it just played all five tracks at the same time with the volume all the way down except for the chords. And then whenever you hit a score total, it was basically wherever a track score, we just said, okay, well, if it hits, over this amount, bring in that layer, like 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 at those score totals. Very, very straightforward. It wasn't super hard. With the fades too, it actually was very nice because you could just say, bring all the layers down, and you could just basically do. It was like the statement was like audio gain basically, and you'd say the audio gain is 0, and then you give it a time and say 1 second, and it would bring it down to 0 over the course of 1 second. So we didn't have to do any extra, sort of like making a fade function or anything like that. So I kind of wish Unity would do that too.
Mm.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's good for people to know going into game jams and such too, because there's most of the time there's no time for any sort of middleware, and your
Oh yeah.
teammates usually also can't be bothered to try and implement it when they've never done it before. So the
Right.
more you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
know in engine, I think the better for sure.
Yeah. And I'm super
There's
glad that I
also
ended up learning how Game Maker works because I'd never used it before this.
yeah,
I had heard the name Game Maker, and I didn't realize that it was as full featured as it was. I kind of thought it was just sort of like, hey, you don't really know how to make games? Use Game
mm,
Maker. It helps you make games. But then I started looking it up and seeing what games was like Katana Zero was made using it, and like there were a couple notable games. I can't for the life of me think of what they are right now. But I was like, really, they're using Game Maker? This is great. Like I'm actually excited about learning Game Maker now.
yeah,
And for Mallow as well, speaking on their behalf, they didn't know anything about Game Maker, and I said, hey, I had this project. Are you interested in just learning something that you don't know at all? And always say yes to that question, by the way. Like if you want to, like if someone is offering some opportunity, like just figure it out later. I remember a couple of years ago, Hillel gave a talk here, and he said something very similar. And I was sitting over here watching the talk, saying like, "Amen, brother." Like that's totally the way to think about it. Like if someone asks you to do something, just learn to do it. So a good skill to have in game audio in general is just accepting that you can't know everything and being ready to pounce on a new learning opportunity. So someone says, "Oh yeah, we're using Godot." Don't say, "I don't know how to use Godot." Just pull up the documentation, do whatever learning modules you can, just sort of figure it out, right? I learned
yeah.
to use Tracker in a weekend, right? Because I was just like, I need to figure out how to do this because I was trying to show something to try to convince this client that I could do Family Tracker related stuff. And so I just, over the course of the weekend, I just all weekend long just read through documentation, watched videos. You should always be ready to learn something new because you never know when an opportunity around the corner to use that knowledge is going to come. So.
Yeah, exactly. And so much is transferable too. I feel like, yeah, no, just not knowing one specific piece of software that's similar to other stuff you've learned in the past, yeah, definitely isn't a reason to not apply or not try and pursue a certain opportunity for sure.
Yeah. I mean, by no
Speaking of
means should you
opportunities,
lie about knowing things.
yeah,
But if someone says, instead of saying, "Oh, well," you just say, "I can do that. I will learn,"
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Just speaking of opportunities, there's one question from the patient husky about so they've they started a studio with some of their high school classmates. They've participated in the Game Makers Toolkit Game Jam for 5 years in a row and released their first game on Steam recently. And they just want to know what your advice would be trying to apply to larger studios and companies trying to get into the industry as a composer. They said they've spent a lot of time on their website, portfolio, and resume. And yeah, I think what they want is to know what you think the best next steps are. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm reading through this too. Having worked on a game, that's definitely a great start. I don't have a lot of experience. I haven't worked with any very, very large companies. I've just been with indies, and I'm very comfortable there. So, but in the end, you just have to showcase very good work, right? Very important. You need to show that you actually, so if you're trying to be a composer, you need to show you're a good composer. If you want to be a sound designer, you got to show that you're good at sound design, right? But also very important, you kind of have to show, especially if you're looking to work on bigger games, that means bigger teams. You got to show in some way, shape, or form that you have the skills necessary to work in a team environment, right? So actually, Michael Sweet has made me do this one thing, and we actually do it with our Berkeley students for their the capstone, like the final class you take, which is to give a technical, make a technical tutorial demo, basically to show that you kind of like you understand what it is that you're doing and you can explain yourself. Shows that you kind of have a certain level of communication, right? Also meeting people, like that's also, we talk about this all the time. You got to meet people. That not only is just for networking purposes, but it also, like, you show up and you show you're a real person, right? And you have, that you're fun to talk to, right? If you show up and you just walk up to a person at a con and say, job, please, right? No one's going to talk to you. You got to prove that you, if you want to get into those circumstances, that you can play well in those. People will want to actually work with you. I feel like that's just as important a kind of skill to work on. And, things like game jams, I think, are, good ways to actually work with a team, right? It's kind of hard to show those skills, like, let's say, on a resume. So the resume, not necessarily a resume, but like a demo reel, right? Something like, a technical tutorial, or maybe like if you had a YouTube page where you were, doing game breakdowns or something like that. I'm thinking like 8-bit music theory, like guys like that. Like, he obviously shows that he really understands how music is put together. Like, doing that kind of stuff on the side also shows that you kind of have a commitment to games more than just like, give me a job now, right? And that really does make a difference. Again, take that with a grain of salt. I work in the indie scene, but I find these things still even apply there. When you meet with someone and they're thinking to hire you, and you meet them on Discord, and you kind of like, it's important to be yourself. You don't want to pretend to be someone you're not, but they're probably gonna gain a lot of information about you, just how you carry yourself, how you talk about what you do, right? I was just in that situation this past summer. It was me and another composer sort of vying it out for this one particular game. He told me, yeah, I'm meeting with another composer as well. So I knew, like, I have to make a good impression on him. He's already seen my work, right? But those meetings, right, when you say, like, I'm meeting with Christian over here. Sorry, that's the orange guy. He was a student of mine. If I'm meeting up with him and I have a good conversation with him, I feel like it's 10 times more likely I'm going to want to work with Christian, because I know that we're going to, have the right vibe as we're working, as opposed to constantly trying to convince you, come on, please get your work done, or like, please see it my way, right? That we both feel like we're not fighting each other. We're both seeing it the same way because we work well together, right? So that is also important. Someone else sounded, oh no, that's you posting that. Right, so again, my experience, I can't talk directly about AAA, but I can definitely say getting into larger companies is not easy, right? So work your ass off. Like, don't let anything, don't do anything half-assed. Let's just put it that way. Prove that you can do things at that high level, and prove that you can work well on a team, and you'll be well on your way. You have to, meet a lot of people. You gotta apply to a lot of different positions, but keep at it, right? And always keep at your music as well. Like, don't think, okay, I got pretty good at music. I'm kind of good where I am. Let's start applying for jobs. You should always be working on some, like, maybe it's a passion project or something to kind of always be pushing whatever you're doing to that next level.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering my question.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, yeah, you're the one with the riff. I was wondering. I saw that. I had to play it on my piano when I saw that.
The meme that won't die.
Yes. Yeah, very good. Well, thanks for coming out. Christian, you got a question? You must have a question, right?
I don't have one right now. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I shouldn't mess with you and put you on the spot. Good to see you, though, by the way. It's great to see you.
Berkeley comes with the territory here, so
yeah.
This group was started at Berkeley, to be fair, so it's always been deeply intertwined in the game audio community, even though there wasn't anything in the way of game audio at the time when Michael Sweet founded this group. So
yeah. I don't remember exactly what year. I wasn't here at the very, very beginning. but I was definitely around when him and Eric were running it, and it was like an in-person meetup. And I still kind of miss those days, but I definitely like the ease of doing it this way, and the fact that we can bring people in from all over. That's always really nice. But unfortunately, since I started teaching at Berkeley, it's been hard to find time to come to the meetings. So as you can see, I haven't been here since you instituted the sort of password protection on the group. And it's actually, Chris, it's good to meet you. I've Noah told me that you were going to be coming on board and everything, and so it's good to finally match a face to the name.
Yeah, that'll be exciting for sure. Yeah, I think with that though, thank you so much, Chris, for coming out to us and sharing so much about your work with us. That was super interesting.
You're very, very welcome. I'm just happy that people want to listen.
Yeah. And speaking of in-person events too. Oh, sorry. Keep going.
Oh, I was just going to say, you bring, a lot of sort of, well-known names in games to this, and to be able to kind of talk in the same group, it's totally an honor to get to just, again, talk about this little tiny, tiny game that we worked on. But it's, I feel like there's something to be taught and learned in pretty much every scenario in life. So, thanks for
absolutely.
having me.
Any game that ships is a miracle, regardless of the scale. somehow it's always way more work than anyone thinks. And so I feel like it's important to get like a broad scope of all kinds of projects that go on and what goes into making them, and all the complications and struggles, but also the highlights of what they bring along with them, for sure.
Oh yeah.
And I was just going to say, speaking of in-person events, as most of you might have heard, but if not, you'll be pleased to know that PAX East this year is also going to be a host to Boston Game Dev Week. That is May 5th through 11th. So we're going to have a whole bunch of in-person events for game dev, for audio. The US's first GodotCon is happening alongside PAX. So if you haven't come out to PAX yet, because maybe you were like, oh, it's too gamer focused, not developer focused enough to maybe make connections and learn a bunch of stuff. This time it's going to be very different, and we're going to have a ton of game dev related events, great networking opportunities. So, and it's right in your backyard. So,
yeah.
How better to get your name out there than to show up there?
Yeah, and it's good we can do this because now this year PAX and GDC aren't in the same week.
Yes, exactly.
I hadn't been to PAX in a long time. I went to PAX 10 years ago, and I just didn't go for a while. And last year I decided, let's go to PAX again. And it was kind of like a little bit of a lull. There wasn't, it was basically like the big booths were set up, and there was the marketing people there, but there wasn't a lot of chance to kind of talk to devs and that kind of stuff. So hopefully this year I'm looking forward to it kind of returning to normal.
Yeah, it's not just going to be the devs that can afford a red-eye flight from San Francisco and then back.
Yeah.
This time you'll actually have more devs there, and everyone should be less stressed.
Yeah. I'm actually personally excited too, because this other game that I'm working on, it's for the Playdate handheld system. I don't know if you're familiar with this thing. It's like this little yellow thing. I actually wish I had it. It's in the other room, but I'm working on a guy developing a game for that. And Panic is going to be showing it as part of the showcase. It'll be, we're making a demo basically, and I'm assuming we're going to be showing it at PAX. So you'll actually get a chance to play this game that I'm working on at the Panic booth. So that's pretty exciting. So I'll definitely be there.
Awesome. Yeah, so it'll be a great chance for everyone to meet you there if they don't know you through Berkeley. But with that, again, thank you so much for coming out.